I remember sitting in English class and I was listening to these kids, and how our room was set up wasn't like a normal American setup. We actually had like a U shape where all the kids, we can all see each other.
Yeah.
And our teacher was in the front. Like, there's no, like, don't call on me. Like, the teacher's right. She could see all of your faces. I remember sitting there, and these kids were so smart. They were so smart. That was the moment. Like, this is a big key point in my life where I was like, you know what? Education's something that only I can acquire, but it's something nobody can take away from me. Like, knowledge is power. And being the dumbest person in the room, like, you're the weakest person in the room. You have these key points in your life where it's just like a light bulb goes off, and you're like, okay, this is it. I picked up my first book when I was a sophomore in high school. My first book I ever read.
Really?
And I never stopped reading from then.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Strong by Design podcast show. Hosting today in my office, Coach Chris Wilson, surrounded by our action figures and superheroes. So much fun here, right, Ash?
So much fun.
I have a special guest I'll introduce in just a moment. Just want to take a quick second, as I always do, and to say thank you for finding our show and for giving the Strong by Design podcast a listen. Hopefully you make it one of the select few podcasts that you listen to on a regular basis. I know I usually have about 3 to 5 that I like to pick through, and it's probably tough to go much deeper than that because you only have so many hours in the day to listen to podcasts. But our show covers a lot of ground. We do talk about all things that help make you strong by design, which is all things body, all things mind, and all things spirit, certainly. And our show just has a natural way of hitting on all 3 of those things, oftentimes in one episode. But as we make these shows and have these great interviews and release them, it's so funny. It's like everything is like a third, and a third of all of these, areas of life, being strong in body and mind and being strong in spirit. And here at Critical Bench, we've been in the health and fitness industry for many years, almost 25 years now. And so the podcast was a great way for us to be able to kind of tap more into that third part of our lives, the more spiritual part of our lives, which as we grow older, I think we give more weight to, certainly. So, because it's not all about just looks and stuff, as it was for us in our 20s. So again, thank you for finding our show. And if you're a return listener, we just love you so much for coming back and coming for more episodes. We share the load here. We have different hosts of the show, which makes us a bit unique. Mike Westerall, the founder of the company, will host. We have Coach Tanya, who's a holistic health practitioner, who hosts, and of course Jared, our in-house pastor / videographer. So we have such a great team, and I'm just so lucky to be part of it, frankly. So I'll ask you one more thing when we get to the end of the show that you could do for us that would really help. But I want to get to our special guest, somebody that's been part of our team for many years now. This is her very first podcast ever, which is pretty exciting. So Ashley, formerly Ashley Castleberry, now Ashley Lamont. Do you have the hyphenated thing going on ever, or did you make us I
made a solid just transition over. I didn't really have any sort of a relationship with my birth last name.
Yes. Okay, got you. So it wasn't anything you felt like I have to hold on to this name.
Other than the fact that everybody knows me as Ashley Castleberry, that's just who I am. Right. And even to that point, a lot of people met me probably in the last, maybe 4 years. They only knew me as Ashley Castle because I kind of dropped the barrier off.
That's right.
So if you didn't know me prior to knowing my full legal name, you just knew me as Ashley Castle.
That's right.
That's interesting because I kind of just, I don't know. Sometimes we want a little bit of privacy.
Well, Castle's kind of just a cool sounding name all by itself. So why not? I know a lot of people who will do that, especially on social platforms.
Yes.
You have a big, social following, different platforms, and especially somebody in law enforcement who maybe wants to be a bit more discreet.
Yeah.
They will kind of just go by a first name or part of a last name.
Honestly, I I took it off. Obviously, I just changed it to Ashley Castle on Facebook, but like on Instagram, stuff like that, you can't find my last name. I don't put it anywhere there. Like even my emails associated with my Instagram, don't use my email with my last name in it. So it's funny, we're doing this podcast. So, hey, what's up, everybody? But totally okay. Absolutely fine. I kind of did it, I think, more so, I don't know, just, a little bit more privacy I can find anything on the internet about anybody. So if I can do it, I know somebody else who probably has malicious intentions could do it towards me. Yeah. Not necessarily that I think that anybody's after me, but like sometimes you have it in the back of your brain. You watch a little bit of Too Many Murder Mysteries, and it kind of creeps
especially
in.
I feel for the ladies out there too, because you get a following that maybe you're not looking to have, because there's some creepy dudes out there. Hopefully I don't have many creepy dudes following me. I'm not too worried about it, Yeah. And there's probably millions of Chris Wilsons walking around. I've just a name. I've like John Smith. It's just such a generic name. It's like I'm actually probably hard to find if you think about it, because there's so many of me, of so many people with that same name. So anyway, the legendary Coach Ashley, part of our YouTube filming team for since 2018, I think it's
18 or 17 or 18, one of those even.
And so I want to know personally more about you, but I know our audience would love to know more about just your story, your backstory, what you came from, like what got you so in love with, figure competition, with bodybuilding, with strength training, with all of those things, and which eventually obviously led to us coming to know you. And you can just talk about a little bit about that story, but take us back as far as you want to go. Yeah. What was the starting point for you?
Well, I mean, we can just start from the beginning. I've always been an athlete my entire life. My mom was a single mom, so hence the no attachment to my legal birth name. Right. So her way of kind of keeping us on the straight and narrow path was sports. Right. She knew that if she was working until 5 or 6, sports were right after school, and she didn't have to worry about us getting into any, riffraff. So regardless if we wanted to do it or not, we didn't have a choice, which I am very thankful for to this day. So I kind of got into sports just like that. My mom just was like, here we go. I started playing softball when I was in 3rd grade. And I played it all the way through high school, and then a little bit of intramurals in college, but I wasn't very serious about it at that point. And I won't get into the reasoning why I switched from fast pitch to slow pitch when I moved overseas and stuff like that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you lived overseas for a little while.
Yeah, I graduated high school abroad, which sports aren't as serious in international schools as they are in American schools. So that was a very hard adjustment for me. But with that said, I started in softball. I moved into basketball. I refused to play soccer. I was like, no. It was a hard no for me.
Even though it's so big everywhere else in the world.
Until I moved to West Africa. And then I started playing.
Oh,
my junior and senior year. Yeah.
Interesting.
Being an athlete wasn't really hard, but what was interesting was I found I was like, I'm ambidextrous because I was a hurdler all throughout high school.
Yeah.
Yep. I was very good. And I was left-footed with the ball. Kicking, striking. I played left mid,
which makes you fairly dangerous and maybe difficult to deal with, like a lefty pitcher in baseball. Probably left-footed, not very common.
I played midfield, so part of that was I didn't want to run too much. I just stayed on the outside of the field, back and forth. I have to get. I don't like people touching me, so as I kind of got older, I kind of strayed away from basketball.
I hear you.
So like other Coach Ashley, she's a basketball athlete. She's tall and stuff like that. We had this conversation. I was like, I'm done with basketball. You're sweaty. Get your hands off me. I was very good in volleyball. I was obviously excelled in track. I was a hurdler and I was a pole vaulter and sprinter. Anything more than 300 meters was too many meters for me. Even 300 was 100 more meters than I wanted to run.
Right. It's like I want to do, which would, for people listening, that would be like half of the track.
Yeah.
Half of one length of the track
is 200
meters. And I agree with you.
That's it.
I only did short sprints. I was never a distance
Not that I
guy.
couldn't do it. I can run. Even so, I don't run now, and I can easily run an 8.5 minute mile. I can do it. My dad's always described me as this. Ashley, you're one way or the other. Either you want to do it and you're going to be very good at it, or you have no passion and you don't want to do it. You're just not even going to acknowledge it. You're just like, nope, I don't want to do it. Not that I can't. I just don't want to. And it's funny because my daughter I was told yesterday, she's very decisive. Somebody was like, do you want this? She goes, no, I don't. She's very just like, yes and no. She's not going to be
That's
like,
a good thing, actually, being decisive, which is very hard for people. It's actually one of our core values, decisiveness. Because people will they don't know what to do. They don't know how to even order off of a menu. Do you know our final step in hiring people for this company is taking them out to dinner with their significant other, if there is one, just to also know what they're contending with when they're not in the workplace.
Yeah.
Is this person a support system or bad for them? But if they cannot look at a menu and make a decision on a meal, what are they going to do in here?
Oh.
You know what I mean? So it's just one of those last things. Can we go out socially and have a good interaction? Talking, openly, and then how are they with staff? Are they courteous? Are they there on time?
Yeah.
Can they make a decision on the menu? Do they overdrink? Are they making lousy decisions and we're just out at dinner?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so it's that kind of a defining moment for them.
I'm going to add a caveat to my decisiveness.
Okay.
I have very bad ADHD too. So I'm just kind of in ordering.
Steak.
Yes.
Okay.
In ordering, and I love food.
Yeah.
Truly, in another life, I'm probably a 500-pound person. I love food. So I will look at a menu, and sometimes I will ask Con, can you order this? Because I really want to try it. But I really want this too. But and most of the time when I have those situations, I will ask the server. Who knows their menu best?
Sure.
Look, I'm between these three things. What are you going to say? Which one? You know what's best.
I can understand that.
So I do. There is a little caveat to that.
For a real foodie, I can understand a little bit of the indecisiveness.
But I'm a Capricorn. I'm an Enneagram 1. I'm very black and white. And because I lived abroad, I always talk about this a lot. A lot of people will say very European mindset. I'm very direct. Again,
yes.
You know this.
Yes,
I don't have to tell you this. You're going to know how I feel all the time. And I was talking to a coworker the other day, and she was she's there's really no gray area with you. And it's not she's I understand you, so I don't take offense to it. But some people do. They think I'm trying to be rude, or I'm not. I don't coddle. I'm just very much it is what it is. And this is a good decision. And that's literally a horrible decision. I'm going to tell you it's terrible too. Right. And I'm probably going to tell you why. I'm not just going to be very judgmental and be no. I'm going to be well, the problem with this is XYZ. Here's a solution to it. So my biggest pet peeve are people who shoot things down without offering a solution. But I think a lot of that is cultural too. In America, we're trying not to hurt people's feelings all the time. When you're overseas, I kind of had to get over that myself. When I moved, I lived in India and then I moved to West Africa. And I was...
From when to when? What were your ages overseas?
So I spent my freshman year of high school in Texas. So I grew up in Texas, which is why athletics was a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
And all those movies you see about Texas athletes are so true. I'd be failing math at 8 a.m. and I'd be passing math at 2 p.m. to playing my game at 3:30 p.m.
Wow.
Yes, 100%, 100,000% true. Yeah. To this day, I don't know, obviously... I'm 33, so I don't know how it is now. But back then, yes, because athletes and athletics took precedence. I was in a very good school district and are highly competitive in sports too. So we had the best of the best. And to have the best of the best, I
think it really ultimately comes down to school funding, because sports really bring in a lot of dollars to the school system. And depending on what sports you're in, the coaches... There's a push with the coaches at the high school level. Certainly, I don't know beyond that. I'm sure there is even bigger, but with getting these kids to a place where they're passing. Yeah. What can we do? How can we maneuver this? How can we guide them through this? Because they're not a good student, but they're a stellar athlete.
Yes.
So what can we do to facilitate
Texas,
this?
Right? It's an old saying that Texas makes the best athletes, but the dumbest people.
But also, just a great overall state, though, for when it comes to what if you had to give somebody your I don't know, your vision for the country, or what you would want this country to to be when it comes to strength and hard work
Yes.
and beauty and all these
Accountability,
things. And
all of that.
Texas kind of encapsulates most of those traits, those characteristics.
Outside of Austin, yes. If you go to
Outside of
Austin
Austin?
and you think that's Texas, it's not. Nobody
really?
yes. Like Austin is wildly liberal at this point.
Oh, wow.
Because a lot of Californians are coming over and stuff like
okay.
that, and they're settling in Austin. It's one of the biggest cities, obviously, in Texas.
Yeah.
But yeah, my sister actually to this point, we're Texan.
It's actually the capital, correct?
Yes.
Isn't Austin the capital
Yeah.
of Texas? Yeah.
So we're Texan, and through. I'm born and raised in South Texas, like 4 hours away from the border, until my freshman year of high school before when I moved overseas, and
okay,
we'll get to
alright.
that. But my sister, she moved to Austin, and she hated it because people in Texas are so nice. Like I know when I meet somebody, we get talking stuff like that, and I find out they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm from Texas." I'm like, I freaking knew it. You meet a Texan, they are just a very. There's just something about Texans.
Yeah.
Like they're very honest, but they're very compassionate. They're very caring. They're just all American people.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
Except for like they just like they want the best for everybody,
Yeah.
and they're gonna love you regardless.
Yeah.
Unless you're a POS, then they're gonna see right through it and they're like, "Yep, I'm out." Like I can see it right now, and I'm not about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love Texas. I love going back and
I just like what it represents. I like what it represents as a Floridian, speaking about like what other state do I really feel is like
Texas and Florida.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think Texas is the other one. It's the only other one I'd probably consider maybe living in, besides maybe the mountains of hiding in North Georgia or Southwest North Carolina.
Right, going to find like 20 acres and going because you find 20 acres in Texas, you're dealing with the 20 acres of heat in Texas too.
That's right.
Because you have to. I'm from the Gulf Coast of Texas.
Okay.
So I've always been around water my whole life, except for when I moved to India. So I lived in Texas until my freshman year of high school. And then my dad, who is my stepdad, who is my adopted dad, so he adopted my sister and I when we were in our 20s. He's been around since we were in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Right? So he's been my whole life.
Sure.
Anyway, so he did 23 years in the Navy.
Wow.
And he retired Navy. And he was just trying to do civilian life. And, most military people spend their entire life in the military. Civilian life is very hard.
Yeah.
It's not structured.
You're used to this regimented.
Yes, regimented, structured. You're used to people being punctual, being on time, like not just showing up for a paycheck, but showing up for a job, which is how I was raised. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves too.
Wow.
Is not the lack of hard work or willingness to work hard. And we see that a lot in society, and we'll get to that later in the podcast too.
Yeah.
But, the State Department actually, the United States State Department, Department of State came and they actually knocked on our door and told my dad, "We want you to work for us." Before they did that, though, they questioned.
As a civilian at this point,
Yeah,
right?
my dad
he's
retired.
Retired military.
He built miniature submarines. He was an engineer in the Navy.
Wow.
And, had a great track record and stuff like that. Like my dad's my best friend. If I could be half the person he is, like I would live a good quality life.
that just proves too another point. It's not always a biological thing.
Yeah.
Family is just family, and it doesn't have anything to do with who gave birth to you or anything else. It's who loved you, who supported you, who was there for you.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is a good man.
Yes.
It's a good, hardworking man. Took care of your mom, took care of you and your sister, and like you said, just is
amazing, phenomenal human.
Yeah.
Like
that's awesome.
The best grandpa too. My daughter, that's
good.
her second favorite person after my husband.
What's her name for?
She calls him Pop Pop.
Pop Pop.
Yeah,
I love it. There's
Pop
always
Pop.
something different, right?
Pop Pop.
Yeah.
Yeah, she loves Pop Pop. But so anyways, the State Department came and recruited my dad and was like, "We want you to work for us." So he went to DC for 2 years, trained and did all sorts of crazy tactical training, non-tactical and stuff like that, and was a security engineer for the State Department. He was the 3rd best in the world. Yeah, what he did. Amazing. So he moved to India, was there for a year, and then decided, hey, if you guys want to join us, because, it's hard. I don't want to say it's hard, but my mom and my stepdad, they always had like separate houses. Like they lived together, but he still had his life, she still had her life, and she's always been by herself, and
they were used to that.
They still have their and I think that's pretty common.
But they still loved and cared for each other. But that's probably a long time. He's out of the country. They never see each other at all.
Exactly. So he still had his house. My mom built. This is gonna sound crazy. My mom bought our house for $30,000, and my dad gutted it and refinished it and fixed it. And like, I'm talking, I remember doing this. He had original hardwood floors, got the sander. I remember watching him sand them down and reseal them, did all the drywall, all sorts of crazy stuff. And I will never touch another shingle in my life because my dad redid the whole roof. So my dad is a man of many trades. Like he literally completely redid this whole house. $30,000. Like you can't even touch a trailer for $30,000 these days, let alone a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, on like a good plot of land. So anyways, we were still there. My dad was in DC for training, and then he went to India. That was his first post, and was there for a year, and then was like, you know what? They have the second best international school in the world, American Embassy School in New Delhi. Wow. And he was like, you know what? I think my sister and I were going down bad paths, like normal teenagers do. Well, 14 and 16.
True. And there's no dad in the house. That makes a big difference.
My mom's working a lot.
She's working. You have too much downtime, freedom, and that's not good for kids. They need 2 parents. Yes. And they need structure.
100%, 100,000%. Just like any other teenager who has a single parent household, you're probably going to get into some trouble.
Yep.
Right? And regardless of how much I feared my mom, and she was a very totalitarian parenting style, like I would have to hide from her when she came home from work because I was just afraid of like the line of fire. I have a very traumatic childhood. My dad is like our saving grace. But anyways, so my dad was like, look, we need to get him out. We're moving him to India. And I'm like, what? You're moving me to a place that has cows in the road and monkeys? I hated it. Hated it. I was like, this is terrible. Let alone, I went from playing sports being my number one sole priority. I wanted to go to college. This is like how ignorant I was. I wanted to go to college to play sports, not to like study anything, right? It's kind of like...
Right, totally.
It doesn't really work like that. You go to college to study something and you play sports. You had a one-track mind
for sport.
That was it. Yeah. Like it was sports. I was all in. I moved to India, second best international school in the world, IB program, international baccalaureate. 90% of the graduates go to Ivy League colleges.
Wow.
So you can see how this was a problem. I went from playing sports probably like, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a week. Maybe more, maybe up to 15 to 1 hour a week of practice, 1 day of practice, 1 day when I would.
Because it's just not a priority there.
Not a priority. Academics.
And you hated where you lived. I've never been to India, so I don't.
So we moved to the compound. So when you move abroad, like obviously government will provide housing for you, or you can live on compound, which not a lot of embassies have compounds. India does, and they have actually amazing compound. The American Embassy School is right next to the compound, and the only reason it's called that is because the Indian government wanted to take the land, and so the American Embassy put it on their charter, so they renamed it American Embassy School. Right across the street was the compound, which was the housing for the Americans, and then right across from that was the embassy. So it was like a 3-plot row. Oh, wow. So the Americans just was like, they worked it out with the government. They're like, look, we're just taking all this. We want to keep the school because our kids go to the school here. There's a really large embassy in India. Obviously the consulate section, providing visas and stuff like that for Indians to come over. I'm telling you, those people are resilient. They will wait 12 hours. The line is around the building to get a visa to come to our country.
Wow.
And I actually worked the consulate section in Senegal, so I can talk a little bit on that later. But anyway, so I moved there, and sports wasn't a priority to the point that like our track was a dirt track. And I'm like, they didn't have hurdles, they didn't have pole vault. Like they literally ran around the soccer field and called it track. And I was like, what is, like, I have my spikes. Spikes on a dirt track. Yeah. I'm like, what is this? The net was a little bit higher. I joined the volleyball team instantly, and then I had a mental block to where I couldn't even spike over the net. I couldn't serve. Like I just went downhill fast.
And you're a freshman at this point?
I was a sophomore.
Sophomore.
Yeah. So, we can get into this later, but this is about the time I was put on antidepressants because I moved to a foreign country where you don't have a blue sky. There are red skies at night. During the day, they're brown. A lot of pollution. And it was really difficult. But wow. I remember sitting in English class and I was listening to these kids, and how our room was set up wasn't like a normal American setup. We actually had like a U shape where all the kids, we can all see each other. Yeah. And our teacher was in the front. And that's how we worked.
More like a college.
Not even stadium style. It was just a big U.
Just a big U, which is actually pretty smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because you can't hide.
Right.
You're kind of right there. You're
Right.
engaging with your peers. Like there's no like, don't call on me. Like the teacher's right. She could see all of your faces. So obviously difficult for me. But I remember sitting there and these kids were so smart. They were so smart. And I was like, oh my God, these people are like, wow. And that was the moment. Like this is a big key point in my life where I was like, you know what? Education is something that only I can acquire, but it's something nobody can take away from me. Like knowledge is power. And being the dumbest person in the room, like you're the weakest person in the room. And at that, literally, it was, I don't know what it was, but you have those moments in your life. And we can talk about obviously my newfound faith and that moment of my life right there.
Sure.
You have these key points in your life where it's just like a light bulb goes off and you're like, okay, this is it. I picked up my first book when I was a sophomore in high school. My first book I ever read.
Really?
And I never stopped reading from then.
Wow.
Like I would go home and I had found a passion, obviously being in a different country, of just international affairs. I would read the news for hours. I would go home, open my laptop till my dad got home, and I would just be reading news and politics and American politics and foreign politics and just relationships that I would read. And at dinner time, I would talk to my dad about it. My dad's like, where did you learn this? I'm like, oh, I was reading it today. And that was literally my sophomore, my junior, my senior year of high school. I relentlessly just read and read and read. So I developed this like wildly passionate like sense of just international affairs and foreign policy and government and American government and all of that. So that's kind of like my background. So if anybody who follows me,
it's probably interesting too, living outside of the U.S.
Yes.
and seeing the U.S. from the outside.
I was very protective of
we're in a bubble here.
100%. And I was very protective of my country too. So a lot of people during that time, they hated Americans. You know, when I lived in India, we weren't allowed
What years was?
So I lived in India from 2004 to 2006. So almost two. Well,
just
it was
after
like
9/11.
Yeah, so it was a year and a half, give or take. Because we moved right after my sophomore year. So we spent all summer and then all of the next year. So it was 2005. So a little into 2005, into all 2006. And then we moved to West Africa. And people did not like Americans. Like
in both places, or
it got worse in West Africa.
Wow.
And it wasn't the West Africans who it was about. It was the international community. You know, they talked down to us a lot, and America, blah blah blah. You think this, you think that, and I'm like, you hate us because you want to be us, like you hate us because you ain't us, kind of personality. And I was very like, I've always been.
You want to stick up for your country,
yeah. And I mean, I was one of 3 Americans in my high school. I graduated in a class of 10 students, 10 different nationalities, and I was the only American in my graduating class.
Wow.
There's only 3 Americans in my high school of 50, in Senegal and West Africa. In India, though, everybody was really nice, to be honest. Like it was like this one thing about being American. I don't know, I would say more cultural, Indian culture, looking at Americans was different versus being in the international community. International community in India, I'm not sure how they built it, but it was very welcoming. But in the Indian culture was just like, oh, American, like, oh, white American, oh, white, blonde, blue hair, blue-eyed American. And kind of had to really, we had a driver, Harris, I love him. He's actually still on my Facebook to this day. But he was very protective over my sister and I, because he kind of understood that too. Anyways, moved to West Africa, and it was different. Yeah, it was totally different. West Africans are I lived in Senegal, one of the only West African countries that has never had a civil war.
Wow.
But they actually have another country within their country. Most people know it's the Gambia. So Senegal was colonized by the French. The Gambia was colonized by the British. 10 miles north, 10 miles south, and 10 miles east of the Gambian River is the Gambia. So you actually have a country within a country, which is kind of cool. Wow. But anyways, yeah, Africans are amazing people. But there's a lot of foreigners who come into Senegal too. And I remember I was at a ice cream shop and somebody was like, are you American? And I would never admit I was American, especially out in like the market.
Yeah.
And I knew like my friends my best friend, he was from Portugal, he's Portuguese, and another friend who's Brazilian. And they kind of like looked at me like it was like a very aggressive, are you American? And I was like, I had an accent at this point because I was around all these international people. Yeah,
sure. So you're going to pick up a little accent.
I was like, no, I'm Australian. He's like, oh, Australian, huh? Because nobody hates Australians. Like, No, like back 2006, 7, 8, nobody hates Australians.
Yeah, nobody hates Australians. All
So
right.
I'm like, no, I'm Australian. And then it's like, Australian, huh? And just kind of like, mind you, I'm like 15.
And this is an adult asking
Yes.
you? While you're out with friends at an ice cream place.
At an ice cream shop at the market.
This, you got the feeling right away, like, this
isn't right.
This is something weird here
Yeah,
going
this
on.
is pretty. Yeah, and you have to. My dad always says, live in the yellow, sometimes live in the red, and I'm always in the yellow. Especially even in the States, especially with our current climate, I'm always in the yellow.
Yeah.
So you always have to be aware. Situational awareness will save your life, and a lot of people don't have that. So like when Americans travel abroad for the first time, I'm like, that's probably not the country I would go to for a first time American. Probably go somewhere safer, but or not necessarily safer, but somewhere where you would be safer not having the situational awareness that you don't have in the United States.
Yeah.
So anyways, I moved to West Africa. It was great. I loved it. I ended up getting off antidepressants when this summer after I left India. And I had such a horrendous experience getting off of them. I was I was walking next to my body. And at that point I said no more pharmaceuticals. I was done. I wouldn't even take Tylenol for a headache. I wouldn't take Motrin. I wouldn't take anything. I would take a nap. I would drink water. I would eat. I would do everything I could until, and if it didn't help, at that point I would take some ibuprofen. I'm like, all right, here we go. And that's kind of where my take goes. So people who follow me on social media, they're like, oh, you talk a lot about politics, you talk a lot about pharmaceuticals. Well, this maybe explains it a little bit for some people.
Yeah.
My background. Like
your experience with them was not
not
a positive one.
I'm wildly passionate about political science, and I'm very passionate about pharmaceuticals because I had such a horrendous experience at 15 years old with them and coming off of them turning 16.
Right.
Anyways, yeah, so that was it. And I moved to West Africa and I loved it. And
what was your escape there? Like what helped, did you start to gravitate more to not just learning and education, but sport there?
It happened the moment I realized the thing about knowledge and education. It happened in India, actually.
Yeah.
I only stayed on because I had to be. It's really hard to get off them. And I actually did go cold turkey. It was the summer. I went back to Texas, and I was like, I don't want to take it. I just didn't want to take it anymore. I was like, I don't want to take this pill anymore. Like, I had to take it every day. And if I didn't take it, I felt like crap. And I was like, I'm done. Like, obviously, there's something about this that's not right.
Right.
And, being a 16-year-old, I'm like, there's something about this that's not right. If I forget to take it, I felt horrendous.
Right.
And I didn't like the fact that I had to take something to feel normal.
Right.
So I actually overcame my issues while I was in India and ended up exploring, going to Taj Mahal, going to the markets, and just really loving it and living in it. And I did Habitat for Humanity down in South India. I got a parasite, got Giardia. It was great.
Wow. I got the enjoying the
whole experience. Yeah, it was amazing.
So by the end of India, before you were starting to
move to West Africa,
enjoy yourself though, and finding good things about the country.
I traveled to Bangladesh while I lived in India and played volleyball in Bangladesh. I traveled to Thailand during my time in India too. So really exploring and being open to exploring too, and just taking in the cultures around me. And then being really appreciative of being American. In India, you have a fish market. Oh, you want meat too? You got to go to another market. Oh, you want fruit? That's the other market.
Yes,
you want clothes? Well, there's 4 different markets. Depends on what the market has, because you can go to a market and they might not have gotten anything in. Or you can go to one market and they have everything. I was buying Abercrombie & Fitch shirts for $2 with the tag still attached, ready to go to the United States with a $50 tag attached because Abercrombie was made in India. Wow. So I was getting as a 15-year-old, I'm like, oh, look at me. I was getting, I was a little surfer girl. So I had O'Neill and Billabong and very expensive in the U.S. My mom was like, I'm not paying those prices. So we never got that stuff. And then I moved to India and everything was 100 rupees. At the time, the conversion rate, 100 rupees was $2. So I'm like, here you go.
Oh my goodness.
my dad would give us $20 like a normal parent in the U.S.
Right.
And I would come home with a whole new wardrobe.
That's crazy.
But it made me really appreciative to have a Walmart in the United States.
Yeah.
One-stop shop. You have meat, veggies, you go clothing shopping, you had it all there. And just the conveniences of our country and what it provided to us. And the safety, and the fact that if you call 911, they're going to be at your house fast. You call 911 and you get in a car accident in India or West Africa, you're probably dead. The chances of them getting to you before anything bad happens are very slim.
It's just not set up.
The infrastructure is not there.
Yeah. So you're in West Africa for how long?
I lived in West Africa for 2 years.
So at this point, you're basically a senior in high school?
I was junior. I did my junior year and my senior year there at International School of Dakar.
And so your time is done there, and then do you come back to Texas at that point?
No. So I had 10 students. I graduated third in my class, which was great. It's a great honor. It was even better.
So you were in the top top 3, which is also top third because was it 10 people in the class? Okay, it's still pretty good. Top 3 is pretty good.
Yeah, but my counselor at this point, after overcoming all my adversities and stuff like that, moving to a foreign country for the first time, I was used as the model student, as a well-rounded student who excelled in academics and sports. Because after India, I told you I didn't stop reading, and I studied just as hard as I did playing sports. And moving to West Africa, the school, they were very aggressive, like not like aggressive, but aggressive. The students were wildly competitive in sports. To have this outsider come in who is really like physically the ability to walk in on a team. So I played on the women's volleyball team and I played on the men's volleyball team because I was that good. And this is when they start introducing the libero position. So I played libero for men's. I ran track. Wow. I played soccer. I played softball. I started kickboxing. I was doing something all the time.
That's right. I remember you telling me about your kickboxing.
Yes, my West African gym, nobody spoke English. I showed up though, all French or Wolof, which is the native language. And here I am, little old blonde hair, blue eyed, like walking into this like big African men gym, and their Senegalese men are tall, and they were so nice. And they took me in like I was family. They're like, come on in. I'm like, okay, and I would just kickbox for 2 hours twice a week. It was great. But again, with that said, so at the end of my schooling in Senegal, my counselor used me as like the well-rounded student because now I was excelling in academics, I was excelling in sports, and I balanced it all wildly well, and I was volunteering all the time. I love volunteering for the summer camps, the kids camps, at the American Embassy. Anytime there was something to volunteer for, you can count me in. I'm doing it. And I just loved it. I was like, right in life. Life was great. It was really good. I did struggle with a little bit of bullying when I first moved to Senegal. Because these people had been there for a long time. I guess their parents had stayed on post for a long time, the Americans who were there, or just the international kids who were there. They had their own group, and it was solid, and I was an outsider, and they did not want me there. And they made it very apparent. I was followed home from school. It was pretty intense.
I can't imagine. I mean, I grew up in a little small town, USA in Connecticut, and just no international awareness of any kind, so that's just such a unique experience for you. But
I guess to say bullying is worldwide. Yeah, it's not just, strict to the United States. But luckily I had a foundation at home. My dad, my best friend, I could tell him anything. My mom, on the other hand, my mom's like, you need to finish this tomorrow. Like, go. Let's get
Take care of business.
Take care of business. My dad's like, let's talk to their parents. My dad, I mean, he's my rock. He's always been my rock. He's always my best friend. And luckily, I had somebody I could go to at home when I was going through the bullying. A lot of kids don't, and that's where we see the crises that we see today.
That's right.
Is you don't have that relationship with a parent figure in your life to be like, hey, this is what's going on, and like this is why I'm crying, and this is why I'm hiding, and I don't want to go to this or that. Yeah. And once that kind of like, that was maybe 6 months, and then it passed. It faded because they realized they weren't getting to me. Yeah. I just like water off my back. That's how I've always lived my life. Water off my back. See you later. Like, keep coming at me, but you're not going to break me down. If anything, you'll make me stronger. So I applied to university in West Africa. I applied to Pepperdine University in California because I wanted to play volleyball. And I applied to UNF, which is besides Pepperdine, was one of the largest universities, University of North Florida. I wanted to be near the water.
I don't even, where is UNF? I don't even know that.
Is it Jackson?
Is it Jacksonville?
I think. I can't remember.
Well, Jacksonville is actually the largest city in the state of Florida in terms of population and stuff, which is crazy. It was 15,000 students when I applied. I applied to I didn't even know there was a UNF. I feel like an idiot.
Yeah,
because, I mean, there's so many state universities in Florida. You know what I mean? They're everywhere. Yeah. FIU, FAU, USF, Florida State, University of Florida, Miami. I mean, there's so many big colleges. Central, UCF is huge.
I think
UCF became one of the largest universities in the state.
Probably.
In terms of school of kids.
Really? Population?
Oh my gosh. I think they have like 40, 50,000 students or something.
I believe it. So I applied to Rollins, which is a private school too. I applied to University of Miami as well, and University of Tampa. And
There's a lot of schools you applied to.
I did. I wrote a lot of essays. I wrote a different essay for every single one of them, too.
Wow.
I know, I didn't reuse it. And I was really upset that I, as third in my class, perfect academics, sports, everything, I did not get accepted to University of Miami. And the person who was sixth in my class, worse grades than I did, because he used to cheat on me. He's one of my best friends. I'm like, here you go, whatever, I don't care. It's not going to hurt me, it'll hurt you later.
He got in?
He got in. I know, but he was also Finnish and Mauritanian. So he was
who?
He was Finnish and Mauritanian.
Finnish and what's the second thing?
Mauritanian, from Mauritania.
I don't even.
It's an African country. So his dad was Finnish.
Where is this country? Where is this country?
West Africa.
It's in West Africa.
Yeah, Central, I want to say.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of countries inside this the largest continent. You know.
Yeah.
That like
he was a foreigner, so I joked. I'm like, you know what, you got him because
of his
they have to fill a certain amount of quotas.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm like, I was angry. I kind of took it personal. I'm like, this is like serious. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I worked my butt off. But anyways, it's fine because God has a plan, you know. And I realize that now at 33. But I got a really good scholarship to go to University of Tampa, academic scholarship. And what a lot of people don't know.
UT, one of the schools I didn't even name. UT,
yeah, University of Tampa.
It's a smaller, highly academic.
4,000 students when I went.
Yeah.
Now it's up to like 15.
Yeah, it's grown.
It's crazy. And it's really expensive.
But I've never been on campus, but I've heard it's just one of the most
beautiful
campuses.
You can tour Plant Hall.
Yeah.
They'll take you up. They'll take you to a minaret.
Wow, it's beautifully.
It's so pretty.
The architecture there and everything is crazy, right?
Yes, and there's a lot of famous people like throughout history. It's been there.
Wow.
And it has a lot of history in Tampa alone. So, I'd never been to Tampa in my life. I applied for university online. I didn't go visit campuses.
Had you ever spent any time in Florida?
My dad's mom, my grandma, she lived in near Ocala.
Okay.
So like 1 week every other summer.
So not really any exposure to the state of Florida at all. And you get into UT.
What's really funny is there are going to be people who listen to this podcast who don't live in Florida either. And they're like thinking about moving to Florida because freedom, right?
right.
Don't make the mistake that every other person who's never been to Florida makes. It's like, I'm going to move to Tampa to be by the beach because you're 45 minutes away from the beach.
Yeah, I know. You're surrounded by water, but
there's no beach in Tampa.
There's no like direct shot either.
And there's no beach in Tampa.
Yeah, there's no beach in Tampa. You're on a bay that's a port.
Yes.
So, you're not on the
A lot of people have this really harsh realization when they move here that like the beach is pretty far, unless you live in St. Pete, which is where I live now, for obvious reasons. Right. I want to be near the ocean. But I was like, I'm going to go to UT. They gave me a great academic scholarship. And if you have children who are applying to university right now, my advice to you as a parent or somebody who's applying right now is petition for more aid. Most people don't know that you can do that with college. So I petitioned for more aid and I got another grant to go. Wow. So I got a $10,000 scholarship and UT at the time was $18,000. And I got an additional $2,000 grant just because I petitioned for it. I just said, hey, is there any other money to be given? And because my sister went to a community college back in Texas. She graduated in 2006. And she went back to Texas. My parents sold their houses. They bought a condo. So when we, left and we did our vacation out back in the country, they had that. So my sister just moved there and lived rent-free. But she went to community college. So my parents' deal with me is we're not going to pay more for you to go to college than we pay for your sister. I'm like, well, that's not fair. She chose to go to community college.
That's right.
But luckily for me, I got it down to $6,000 they had to pay. So I did take federal student loans to make up the difference because my mom was very strict. She was like, we're not paying anything more than what we pay for your sister. My dad regrets that decision to this day. He's like, we had the money, we should have just paid it. Because student loans is a never-ending hole that is forever.
Oh my gosh, I feel for these kids who go to these schools that are $30,000-$40,000 a year.
That's what it ended up.
And they're just graduating with a six-figure debt.
That's it. Like, you're not going to get your dream job out of college. Like, at the end of the day, you're not going to. So
very rarely does that ever happen where you just landed that big deal.
Yeah.
That big job, that high-paying job at 22 years old.
It's
not going to happen.
It's just not. You have to work your way up. So, I went to University of Tampa. The only thing I lifted were shot glasses. So I actually didn't. I played intramurals, but like intramurals aren't serious, And I did not drink until I went to college. I feel like I'm one of the few people. I'd never drink in high school, ever. ever. I was like the kid who preached to my parents, like, this is what you do. You feel like this the next day, and they probably want to cut my head off, but here I am lecturing my parents, and not my dad, more so my mom. I'm like, yep. I did not pity her when she had a hangover. I'm like, you did this to yourself. And then my sophomore year is actually when I started drinking alcohol, and I was the DD my freshman year. I was like, I don't want to deal with that stuff. No, thank you. Not for me. But yeah, and then I drank enough for the rest of my life, to the point that I'm 33 and I don't drink at all. I stopped drinking when I started bodybuilding. So college, all that stuff, got out, didn't get the dream job. I actually did Air Force ROTC in college because...
Were you doing you just doing some fun intramural, type sports, but, just like, or it's like organized, it's like just organized fun sports.
Yeah, right? Basically. I would go to the spin class
students.
on campus once a month. I would go lift weights once a month.
It wasn't a thing for you at the moment.
I got into this American, oh my God, this is great.
Okay.
And I joined a sorority, and I hung out at USF, and I made friends up there. So I was going back and forth between campuses and college football and the full college experience, I would say. I lived on campus.
Yeah.
I partied. I did all the fun stuff. And then it was over. And then I continued to do it until I was 23. And I realized one day I woke up and I was like...
It's not getting me anywhere.
Yeah, I promise you. I was at after party. I looked around. I was like, what am I doing in my life? At 23 years old, I realized this. And I'm like...
That's good, because some people don't realize it until they're almost out of their 20s.
There are some people that was partying with 10 years ago who are still partying 10 years later. So I was like, what am I doing with myself? So I literally, as I say, I hung up my partying heels and I got my running shoes out. And I joined a gym. I joined Orange Theory Fitness in 2013. January 2013.
And you said, well, this is something that's good for me, and I kind of like it. And then you just kind of...
It was expensive.
Just like you did with your reading and getting,
I had the epiphany right there. I was at an after party, and I looked around, and that's very much my personality. I just flip a switch. I can. And I think it's like a superpower I have. I can just flip the switch and be like, that's it. And that's exactly what I did. It was expensive as a 23-year-old to pay group fitness. Orange Theory is, even to this day, $189 a month now. Back then, I think I paid $100. 10 years, $100 for a 23-year-old, that's a lot of money.
Big deal.
But it wasn't more money than I wasn't paying at the bar. It wasn't more money than I was paying for Sunday Fun Day, going and eating wings at the Rack.
That's right.
So I just had to really prioritize that I wanted to do this for myself. It helped my mental health. And I struggled with depression my whole life. Hence, when I was in India, I was on antidepressants. But I still went through those. It's all in my my clinical file. I have severe depression, spouts and bouts, and I was hospitalized for it and stuff like that. But once I started fitness, I realized it went away. It was one thing when I felt my life was out of control that I can control. I could show up when I showed up. I controlled how hard I worked in the gym. And I got results from it. Right. The more work I put into it, the more I reaped from it. So it was measurable. And I was like, okay. It gave me that little dopamine hit into my brain. I was like, finished a good workout. And Orange Theory is heart rate-based technology. It's on the screen, and you see it. You're like,
fun.
How many splat points did I get? Yeah. I'm getting an afterburn. It's the gamification of fitness.
Yes.
Right? So now, and this is very well studied, gamification of fitness keeps people engaged.
Sure.
And it's totally true.
It's a little competitive.
Wildly competitive.
Yeah.
You're running on the treadmill, and you're like, bro, you're looking at the person's treadmill on the left and the right. You're like, I'm going to go 0.1 more because I'm going to beat you.
That's right.
Right? Or you're, whatever it might be. It's one of those things. And it changed my life. So insert fitness. So I started working out in 2013.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.